program. It becomes interesting to say that the white man oppresses the black man because perhaps the white man sees the black man's penis as being larger. What kind of solution does that suggest? That black men shrink themselves? I don't think that's a viable solution. Or to protect one's genetic pool, that's a viable explanation in a way. Or that they keep us subordinated because they believe we have a lower IQ. But realize this, ladies and gentlemen, these whites are going to oppress us whether we have little penises or big penises. They're going to oppress us whether our IQ is larger or smaller. The issue then is not one of the discussing of IQ and discussing whether an IQ test is culturally oriented or whether it is really true that black men are bigger than white men. And hoping then by showing that they are actually the same size, that then the white men will stop oppressing black men. Forget that. It is enough that white men get material wealth from oppressing black men. Power and what? Prestige from oppressing black men. Comfort from oppressing black men. We don't have to go into the underwear. We don't have to go into the jeans. Hey, I'm living well, and I want to what? Keep living well. And if that means putting my foot on your neck, that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter if I have no penis. No, that's the deal. So, it's good and it's intriguing. There's a lot to that, and it explains a lot, but then at the same time, we have to keep focused on some things here. What is it? That racism provides economic, political, psychological, and social advantages. And it is highly unlikely that whites are going to be what? Persuaded out of those advantages by any attitude change or anything. The determining feature of race relations is not prejudice toward blacks, but rather the superior position of whites and institutions, ideological as well as structural, which maintain it. I'm going to run through here because that's more that I keep in within time. Racism is more effectively analyzed then as a strategy for the maintenance of the privilege rather than as prejudice. I've talked before to people about how in the future we're going to have what I call faceless racism. Covell, in his study of white racism, talks about meta-racism. When the racial attitudes of whites will not be readily apparent. They won't call you dirty names. They'll be nice to you. You can live with next to them, sleep next, but you can still have the problem of trying to figure out why are we still where? On the bottom. Why, after all of this desegregation, fair housing laws, and all of these other things, integration of schools, and the whole bit, are our people still down and out and suffering and on the point of annihilation? If we view racism as a culturally sanctioned rational response, now what you understand, a rational response, because a lot of people want to define racism as what? Some irrational, hate-filled orientation. You don't have to define it that way. Rational response to struggles over scarce resources. What are we saying here? There ain't enough for everybody. And I'm going to what? Get mine. And getting mine involves putting my foot on your neck. And I am thinking in perfectly what? Logical, rational terms. Period. And I am not crazy. I am not irrational. I am saying I want to feed my children first. I want to clothe my family. I want to stay out of the cold. I want other people doing all the hard work and the whole bit. And hey, both of us can't live this way. I know who I want to live this way. Straightforward. Straightforward. But we refuse to deal with it that way.
Oh, Hans, I loved the book, and I'm not the press. I felt like I was speaking with a friend who could really put my thoughts into words, put it down on paper and rationalize everything that I think. It was beautiful to me, and it doesn't depress me. However, I think that if we really want to make a dent in this empire, that we may have to put our lives on the line, unfortunately. Look at what happened in the park. Just, the repression is so constant. As far as the analysis of empire, you say nobody's really challenged that. The systemic problems, I disagree. I think that the groups that gained the least from the empire have always challenged it, and they have to be repressed the harshest, and that's the American Indian movement and the black movement, because they were the greatest victims of empire. I think they've always challenged the system, and they've had to be crushed,
Well, to clarify, and maybe I'll give myself the last word before we go to Izzy's, but I did not mean to say that no one has challenged the assumptions of empire in this society. I meant, and it's in my notes, that is, those within the government, and I would depart from probably Johnson and even Parenti, in terms of those who are now within the Congress of the United States and the official branches of the U.S. government. There is no one that I know in his or her writings, public speeches, who has challenged the assumptions of this imperialist system. They have voted against particular wars. They have made speeches. Robert Byrd is always making eloquent speeches, and he always votes for the money to continue the war. Watch their feet, not their mouth. Watch where they go, not what they say. This is it. We'll leave that as the final word for tonight.
This was kintécast number 2, Enter the Roach Messiah. The voices in order of appearance are Njoki Njehu of Kenya with the V-Man of freakradio.org, formerly 101.1 FM in Santa Cruz. They were in a show called What's Missing in U.S. Africa Policy. Dr. John Marciano, Professor Emeritus, State University of New York, lecturing in a presentation called Empire as a Way of Life. Harold Pinter, speaking for his acceptance of the 2005 Nobel Prize of Literature in a show called Art, Truth, and Politics, produced by Maria Gillardin of tucradio.org. Amiri Baraka with Franklin and Commodore of KBFR Boulder Free Radio, Colorado, featuring the banned poem Somebody Blew Up America. Dr. Amos Wilson, a psychologist, speaking in a presentation called White Imperialism and Black Self-Annihilation. This recording comes from libradio.com. A sampler we called Doctoral Warriors for the African Mind. The music in order of appearance. Well, that was Cassandra Xavier. She was performing Love is a Battlefield, composed by Mike Chapman and Holly Knight. This is in a streaming audio presentation at kintécast.com called Nothing Is All I Need. We also had Afrofractal performing Enter the Roach Messiah. Afrofractal is at afrofractal.megafunk.com. That's AFROFRAKTAL.MEGAFUNK.com. We also had Tamika Drew performing Killing Alley. Finally, we had Fumalao Bankole performing Digital Chip from her CD Baby album LA River. On kintécast.com, it's in the streaming audio presentation LA River. The audio components used in this mix include something from Bill Laswell, something called Ambient Grooves from Sony Creative Software. And Roz X Music had some stuff in there from Roz X.